Welcome to the first ever episode of How to Get a Guy in 10 Ways podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Markham.
And I'm your host, Danielle Hanlon.
And we're going to teach you how to get a guy in 10 ways through the next 10 episodes of this podcast. Yes, this is a limited time podcast because maybe you're a previous listener of either of our work. So in the past, I did the podcast called Head to Heart.
And I was a co-host on the podcast, Your Two Best Friends.
So we'll link those down below. But that's not the main point here. The main point is that in our work, in our time spent on college campus, in our time spent with our friends, and then in our own personal dating lives, until we got married, both of us have been married for 4 years so far, and counting. In that time, we noticed again and again and again this fear of dating, this over-spiritualizing dating from Christian women. And we noticed some of the same mistakes over and over, that which of many we have committed ourselves. So we just wanted to make this podcast that will help Christian women get out of their heads and into the dating world. Because I don't know if you knew this already, but Gen Z is the most single generation there ever has been.
Wow. Let me tell you something, listeners. The training wheels are off. Mm-hmm. And this podcast series for the next 10 episodes is going to be mostly off the cuff of Jenny and myself. And you've never heard us like this before. So buckle up and get ready to get a guy in 10 episodes or 10 ways because you deserve a relationship that is fulfilling and wonderful if you want one.
If you want one. If you don't want one, that's okay too.
Then you still deserve it, but you don't have to.
You can still listen, but like, why would it be helpful?
Maybe you're big fans.
Yeah,
and you've missed us, and
that's
we've not been creating content because we've been too famous from our last book. The fame has gotten to our heads.
So let me explain this title. I don't know if you're familiar with the 2003 hit rom-com with Matthew McConaughey and Kate Hudson. It's called How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Now, that is a funny movie.
That's a really good movie.
It's really
one
funny.
of the best rom-coms.
And 2003 was kind of a really good year for movies because a lot of good rom-coms came out that year. So in honor of that movie, I had the idea, I don't know when it came to me, probably while I was in the shower or halfway falling asleep, because that's when the best ideas come.
And that's true.
Or weeding the garden, that's when best ideas come too. Is I thought, well, why don't I make a podcast episode called How to Get a Guy in 10 Ways? It's kind of the opposite agenda of that movie. So I thought of that in May 2022, and back on Head to Heart, way back when my husband and I made an episode that was only for subscribers. It was called How to Get a Guy in 10 Ways. And so we talked about 10 simple ways that a girl, if she is finding a guy interesting, wants to get to know him, can show interest without being abrasive. And that episode is no longer available. It was a long, long time ago, just a bonus one for only subscribers. But then I floated the idea of making a 10 episode podcast past Danielle. Maybe the end of 2024 I did that. And your initial reaction was,
let's do it right now.
Oh, is that what you said? Oh, okay. I don't remember the enthusiasm. I'm just kidding.
You're like, that's not how I heard it.
That's not what you
Which
said
is why
to my
we're recording
face.
it now. I'm just kidding.
And I felt like, okay, maybe spring of 2025. But then I didn't feel like that was the right time, which was really good we didn't do it then because our lives got chaotic.
They did.
At that same time. But then in May 2025, I said, what if this is a summer project?
And then it became a summer project. And that's what's special about Jenny and I. We both are ideas people. We come up with ideas and we're both like, let's do it. And so the Lord kind of gave us this timing, which ended up working out perfect because our lives have been crazy. And so now we're here in the summer of 2025, ready to talk to you about how you can date well. Now, this was made clear to me by a number of things. Jenny mentioned, we've been on college campuses, and so we've kind of seen what dating's like. And dating is hard in general, even outside of right now, which I feel like is a little bit harder than it used to be. And, a lot of my friends have remained single, but have been wanting a relationship. And so that kind of clued both of us in of like, okay, something's happening. But I was driving in the car about 2 weeks ago when I was stopped at a red light. And I look over and there's a guy in the car next to me and he's like pointing. And I'm like, is he asking me if he can make a right on red? So then the light turned green and I was like, he doesn't need my help anymore. So I sped away. And there's another light right after that one. So we were both parked again next to each other at the light and he keeps pointing. So I rolled down my window and I'm like, can I help you? And he said, can I get directions to your phone number?
Oh.
And I said, I'm married. And he said, how long have you had that problem for? You give off single vibes. And I was like, I've been very happily married for 4 years.
It's actually not a problem. Thank you so much.
And he was like, that's what they all say, and rolled up his window and sped away. And the first question I had was, what are single vibes?
And why were you giving off single vibes sitting in your car alone?
Maybe ladies aren't allowed to sit alone in their car anymore.
I guess not.
Because that's what made me single. I was sitting in my car alone, and that was my first mistake. Mm-hmm. I should always have a man with me.
Yeah.
My second mistake was being happily married, even though I was married. But I literally sent Jenny a voice message afterwards, and I was like, this is the dating pool.
And I think that happened right after we talked about some ideas for this podcast, and we were like, it's a sign. We have to get it.
It's rough out there.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going on.
We have to send the lifesavers.
We've got to step in and do something about this.
Yes.
Because that was a rough experience.
A big problem.
At first, I was impressed, I'll be honest with you, Jenny, because
that first line.
Well, it wasn't
creative.
It was the fact that he'd asked in person. Because I don't see a lot of that anymore. So at first I was like, I respect that he can't see my wedding ring. It was on the hand he couldn't see. Mm-hmm. So I was like, you know what? That was totally respectable that he went and asked me out in person. But then it got weird where he could have just been totally cool about the fact that I was married.
Very chill and be like, oh, sorry.
Yeah, literally no worries. Like, totally respect that. Mm-hmm. Have a good day. And I would have been like, what a normal reaction. I respect that you had the courage to ask me out in person. But it was just the way he was, obviously, understandably feeling a little rejected. But then just made it weird.
It's your problem. You were giving off single vibes in your car, sitting alone at a stoplight.
You were asking for this, giving off those single vibes in there.
I felt it all the way over here from my car, sitting alone.
He didn't know I've got some cute single friends. Jenny's got some cute single friends. He was a nice guy. Who knows who we could have hooked him up with. But
he lost that potential.
He lost the potential, and it made us realize this problem is bigger than we thought.
It's rampant. It's rampant. Yeah. Gen Z is the most single generation right now. And that's because we have an isolation and loneliness epidemic. And I'll tell you, when I was in college was really the first time I was starting to thinking about seriously dating, because up until that point, I was too terrified to do anything. I didn't have any real instruction. I didn't feel like anyone had given me any how-tos. Then also, I kind of grew up in this environment where it was like, you don't care about the boys. You just focus on God and you do something amazing for the kingdom. Really, that was the message given to me. So in my mind, it was kind of like, well, dating it's always going to pull you away from God. Mm. It's going to distract you from your calling. It's going to, all these things that were negative. So I didn't necessarily have any positive framework for what dating could be in a good scenario. And college was the very first time that God was starting to open my eyes and say, I didn't place that fear in you about this. That's man-made.
Growing up, I think dating for me was definitely all over the map, and I never thought that I would get married right out of college. I never really dated in high school, but I had the desire, and I didn't really see anyone in my church or youth group that I was really wanting to date. I mean, if you grew up Christian like we did, that's when you go to camp so you can see if there's a new pool to see a cute guy from, but then you kind of know that it's going to be quote unquote long distance. They live 45 minutes away or something.
You have to weigh the pros and cons.
You have to weigh the pros and cons.
It's about sacrifice. I only knew him a week.
Were they weird in their youth group? And I did not realize that at Christian camp. You know what I mean? Yeah. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. And then you only see them at convention and, winter retreat. It's a really hard relationship. But really, I didn't find anyone at church or that I wanted to date. And then in high school, it felt like I was pulling from a pool that weren't Christian. And so in my mind, I knew that that's not really a pool I wanted to specifically date from. But it kind of made dating weird for me because I didn't have any experience when I was younger. But I always had this desire. And so when I got to college, I had the desire and I wasn't really afraid of dating, but I didn't really know how to date. I didn't really understand like what I wanted in someone. I kind of just had this unfulfilled desire for so long that I really had no like qualifications for a man I wanted to date, or I really had no expectations or thought about boundaries, or there were so many things I just hadn't thought through because it was kind of the looming presence of you want a relationship but you've never had one. Is that because of you? Is that because of it was kind of just this really big cloud of uncertainty. And so I feel like a lot of other people in college may have had that experience, and still now, where you maybe haven't dated and it's not like you have a long list of suitors that you're like, I can just select from. And so it's kind of, you're like, I'm in murky waters. How do I start? Do I like reject every guy right off the bat that doesn't fit some criteria? Mm-hmm. What's criteria?
That has a fishing picture on the online dating site. I don't really like fishing. Should I just swipe? I don't know.
Or is it like God is greater than everything in your like Hinge bio? I was supposed to say Tinder, but then I'm like, I don't think they use that for long term. No, I don't think so. I think everyone who goes on there like knows what that's for. Yeah. Does anyone meet on Tinder for long-term relationships? Let us know in the comments if that's still a thing. And so I think what I'm trying to say is now I'm married, but I think I wish I had some resources that I listened to. Maybe there were resources and I didn't pay attention to them, but maybe a roadmap of like, hey, you want to date. That's a good and healthy desire. Let's do it in a healthy way.
Yeah. And one of the trickiest parts can be going from point A to point B. Point A being I'm single and I want to be in a relationship sometime soon. Point B is you're in a healthy romantic relationship. There's so much that happens in between just those two letters. A to B can feel like a roller coaster. Yes. Absolute roller coaster, because you have to be vulnerable. There's really no way around that. You got to risk some things, but it could really pay off. But you got to get over the piece of, what if I get rejected? There's a lot of things that happen. There's also the I'm interested in someone, but the poor sap has no idea yet. So how do I show him that I'm interested without being like too aggressive, too abrasive, in an attractive way that he'll like want to ask me out? So our very first episode, we knew we had to make an episode about loving your single life.
Yes.
But that may sound contradictory. You're thinking, if I don't want to be single for much longer, then why would I need to work on enjoying my single life? Because I want to escape it. I don't want to settle into it. The truth is, when you're content being single, that is the best place to start dating, because it's not that you don't desire marriage anymore. It's that you just enjoy your life today.
If you dread extended family gatherings because the question that's going to come up is, are you seeing anyone?
If you feel embarrassed to say that you're single to other people, or if you feel embarrassed that you haven't dated at all before,
if you're holding back on following your dreams because you feel like you'll do that when you're married,
or if you're waiting for your adult life to start once you have a man in your life, then chances are you are probably not content in your single life right now. But it's okay. You can fix that.
Contentment is something that is really important to most aspects of life. When you do things out of like a heart that's not content with your situation, you make rash decisions, you can get into the wrong decisions. It's no different than in dating. If you are feeling any of these fears, and the most important thing is just to be in the relationship. That's the goal, because you're not content being single. That's where people end up in the wrong relationship. That's where people end up settling. That's where people end up in a will they, won't they that takes so long and so much emotional energy, and you get so hurt that it paralyzes you from going after maybe who you really want, or getting back on the saddle and putting yourself out there again after rejection. And so contentment and being single isn't a way that it's like, oh, this is just some moral thing I have to check off because I'm a Christian. I need to be content in this part of my life. It's a safeguard that allows you to know that you're making a good choice when getting into a relationship or pursuing that out of a good heart, that you don't have to be worried, I'm going to just not see all these red flags.
Exactly. And if you do not practice contentment now, literally today in your life, not just when you get into a relationship in the future, which we are hoping happens for you, then some of the things that could happen eventually, if you're not cultivating it now, is, let's say you do get in a relationship and you guys work out and you get married and you've checked off this life goal, but then you get into the trenches of marriage and you start feeling like, well, all your friends are still single, and remember when life was so easy when you were single and you didn't have to consider this other person and we didn't have to argue about these things, and you think to yourself, single was so wonderful. Why didn't I do whatever while I was still single? So if you're not cultivating that right now, you will not be in the practice of cultivating it in other hard seasons of life.
Yeah. Contentment also in singleness and the inability to kind of achieve that is also going to show through when you are in a relationship. The absence of contentment, again, is in all areas of life, and it's going to be in every season of life. And right now, you may think, I will be content when I'm in that relationship. But how our humanity works, how our brains work, is once you get into that relationship, then you'll be like, I'll be content when we get engaged. I'll be content when I get married and I have a wedding. I'll be content when I have kids. And the goalpost always moves. And you're going to find that throughout even the relationship that you've wanted so much, that you've worked to cultivate, you finally have, you're still then never contented. And so we don't want you to fall in this trap of discontentment, because it's a lie that keeps telling you, if I just have one more thing, it's going to solve this. And that's not what's going to solve that discontentment in you. So this is something that has to be rooted out in the beginning of this dating journey, because we don't want it to impact the rest of your relationship journey through your life.
I remember when I started to finally grasp, okay, can I really be content while single? I was a freshman in college and I hadn't dated before. And I was super insecure about that fact about myself. And I thought, okay, if this is really true, and if I can truly be happy just being single, not be embarrassed that I haven't dated before, that's going to set me up for success in the future. But is it really true? Can I actually do that and believe it? And I remember thinking, okay, that means I have to change my mindset that dating and marriage is not my reward. It's not my goal. Because up until that point, I was thinking, if I just, live a good Christian life, I'll eventually get married someday. And if I just follow the rules, I'll eventually get married someday. But that wasn't the goal that God wanted me to live towards. I had to say to myself, okay, is Jesus really enough? And can I live like Jesus is my reward? Because relationships come and go. And at the end of my life, I'll see him. I won't see anyone else. So I initially said that to myself, okay, what does that feel like? I close my eyes and say, what does it feel like to say Jesus is my reward? And at first, it didn't necessarily feel good in me because I had no practice living like that. And I thought to myself, okay, I don't feel like he's enough, but I do believe that he's enough. So I can get there. And then through growing in my relationship with Christ and in my community, and then working through fears about dating, I got to a place where I could say, yeah, Jesus is my reward. He actually does fulfill every need I have and every desire I have. And then out of that place, I was able to start dating because I wasn't so afraid of rejection anymore. It was like, okay, I could get rejected and that would hurt, but I would be okay.
Yes.
Like I would make it through. It's not my identity to be rejected.
Yeah. That's so important that Jesus is your everything. Because again, with discontentment, you can get in a relationship and that other person could become your everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they hurt you, if they leave you, if all of a sudden you're elevating them to a place in your life that Jesus is supposed to be, they will disappoint you. And all of a sudden, then you're not, again, content. You're not happy. It has an impact on your identity. And it's because they were never supposed to fulfill that place in your heart that Jesus was supposed to fill. And so that, then in relationship, it's not that you can't come back from it. It's not that if you're listening to this and you're like, wait, I'm married and I'm feeling like convicted about this, that the Lord can't change that and work through that and reconcile that and heal that. But it makes it harder when you do get into that relationship to switch those priorities. And you also want to date someone that has those priorities.
Yeah.
That isn't making you their absolute everything where Jesus should be. And so when we're talking about this, it's setting yourself up for success. It's like laying a foundation for a house. You're like, I want a house that lasts a really long time. I want to enjoy being in it. You know, I want to like how it looks. I want the inside to be cozy. But if the foundation sucks, it doesn't actually matter what it looks like or what it feels like inside or anything about the house, because the foundation sucks.
And
it's
just
not,
keep putting money into fixing
yes,
it.
and it's not safe to live in. It's not safe to have.
Mm-hmm. And it depends on what type of church you grew up in, and maybe not even the denomination, but just the specific people you were around. Sometimes the church, you know, individually churches, because it depends on the church you grew up in, can kind of treat singleness like it is less than. But we want you to get that out of your head so that you can start living on purpose today while you don't yet have a relationship. So sometimes a church could implicitly or explicitly say these messages like, well, I'll only be respected once I have a spouse, or I'll only get to start that ministry once I have a husband, or I will only start getting involved in volunteering with this certain ministry once I have someone to do it with, because it's just too scary to do it by myself. If you believe those things, those will turn into personal lies that make you think, I need to trick God into thinking I'm fully content in singleness so that he'll finally reward me with a spouse. You can't trick God. You can't do it. He sees right through it. Don't even try. Don't even try. Don't, close your eyes, peek over your shoulder and say, yes, I am fully content. And just kind of like wait for that husband to
magically appear out of the sky.
Yes. And, I've heard some people say stories of when they meet their spouse, and it goes something like they found their spouse when they least expected it. And we just have to keep in mind that is a personal experience. That is not a formula for finding your spouse. That's not like, here's a how-to. It's just their own personal experiences that they were not expecting it. So don't try to trick God and say you're not expecting it when you really are.
I think that's why I found myself in. It's like, if I could just trick God, and you don't think you're actually tricking him, but you kind of know on the inside.
You don't say, yes, I'm going to actively trick God. I'm going to get him.
But you kind of know on the inside, like, you're not fully content, but you're just like, I'm just going to keep thinking in my head that I am, and be like, God, I'm content, like, whatever. And then it's like, when you least expect it, that's when you find a relationship. And then it's like telling God, like, I'm least expecting it now. Like, this is a good time. Yeah. And that's the problem with, again, thinking there's formulas.
Yeah. Because
you hear someone else's story, and it's our nature to compare. And be like, this happened for them. Well, they said it happened when they least expected it. They said as soon as they felt content, God gave them a spouse. And that might be true for some people, but really every story is so different that it's not going to be the magic button of like, I'm finally content and I don't have a spouse, because maybe you're finally content and you don't date for 10 years. Maybe you're not content and you do date.
Yeah, and think about it. At least if that's the case, you're happy for 10
years.
Yes,
because you're content.
Regardless of if you have someone or not.
Yes, it's also not something to be scared of. We don't want to trick God into, like, or trick ourselves to think we're tricking God into saying we're at a different place spiritually than we are, because he's too good to us to let that fly.
Yeah.
He's too kind.
Yeah. The question really is, do I genuinely believe that what God has for me is what is best for me?
Yeah.
And that can be hard to come to terms with. But if you really do trust him, then you will be fully okay with what he brings into your life.
Yeah.
So singleness is a great time to ask the question why you are currently single. And sometimes we hate that question if it comes up at, family gatherings or someone just says it, but they're saying it like a compliment. Oh, why are you still single? And you're like, I just feel really weird about this. I don't know. I don't have an answer. I'm sorry. I don't know. But what they, usually mean is like a compliment, like you're amazing. I hope you meet someone great soon. But there are reasons, or just one reason, why you're still single. But don't worry, none of those reasons are that something is wrong with you or that you're not good enough or anything negative about your character and your identity in Christ. Who you are in Christ will not change. But there are just practical reasons why you are still single right now. And that's something you need to come to terms with if you want to eventually change it. When I finally asked myself this question and was, real with myself finally, instead of just kind of brushing it off because I was afraid the answer would be really painful of saying, what if I'm just not good enough for it? No, the real answer was I had been so afraid of being vulnerable and experiencing rejection that I had not allowed myself to be noticed or get to know any of the guys that were in my current community very deeply. And then because of that, I was avoiding opportunities to get to know the guys in my circle. So the answer was not something's wrong with me. It's that I've made this pattern in my life. And because I finally pinpointed it, I was able to fix it.
For me, I think when I was realizing why I was single, I was scared, honestly, of commitment, even though I wanted a relationship. Because when you're single for so long, and with dating apps nowadays, it's even harder. You're like, okay, well, I'm so used to browsing. You kind of have an image in your head, a fake reality you've created of what your spouse will be like. And maybe someone comes along that would be a pretty good match or, would be a good person to date, but you're like, they're not exactly perfect yet. And if I get off the market now, what if someone perfect comes along and I don't want to stick with this person? I want that person. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I had to get over the fear of committing to someone because someone else better might come along. Because in reality, that could be true at any time. Someone more attractive might always come along. Maybe someone funnier might come along. But you're not committing to dating because they're the most attractive or the funniest
in the world
or the anything, because again, you'll always be disappointed. So the answer is there was nothing wrong with me, but I had to change maybe how I thought about dating. I had to change how I thought about commitment. I had to change what I thought the purpose of dating was, instead of being like, oh, like there's just something wrong with me. That's why. Sometimes that's kind of like a coverall to be like, okay, I'm worthy of dating. My identity is in Christ. I don't have to be someone that I'm not. But am I getting in the way of myself here? Is there something that it's like, okay, I'm just holding myself back, not from anything in my identity, but from lies I believe or fears that I have. And so I think I also was really afraid of rejection. That's something that I was afraid of. And I think you have to kind of open yourself up to that. Jenny, you mentioned in the beginning being vulnerable. That's huge. You are probably going to get hurt in this journey to date. If you saw the movie How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, they both also get hurt.
They were both hurt. It did work out. Don't worry.
But they both were hurt during the process. So getting a guy in 10 ways, you also have to accept that you probably might get hurt in this process. You might be rejected in this process. But guess what? Even in a relationship, you get hurt. It's true. Sometimes you feel rejected. And so it just feels worse now because it's like, oh, I really wanted to date them. But really, you're never safe from that in a relationship. And so that fear and that lie of like, I can't handle rejection and I can't put myself out there because I'm too afraid of getting hurt is something that Jesus can help you build resilience towards in order to not let that hold you back from dating.
And so maybe some of the reasons that you're currently single are things like you just changed schools or you just moved cities, you're new, you don't yet have a community, you haven't gotten to know people yet, or maybe you're not very plugged into your church. Maybe you feel uncertain about what your next living situation is going to look like, or you aren't comfortable dating yet after a first date, you pick out minor preferences and then ghost them, or you have a cynical view of men, or you believe that all the good ones are taken, or you've been really, really hyper-focused on work. These are all valid reasons why you're still single. The point is you just gotta pick those out so that you can work on them.
Yes. Dating is like a job, and you have to date intentionally. A man is not going to fall out of the sky. It's not going to fall out of the sky when you're immediately content. It's not going to fall out of the sky when you create a fake reality in your head and you imagine the perfect man. You're like, show up now. You have to put
Show up now.
Go, abracadabra. There you are. You have to put yourself out there. And so think of the reasons. Are you not in circles where men that you would be interested in dating are? And that means, maybe the example is you're not plugged into your church, but you want to date a Christian.
Well, step one, get plugged into your church.
Think through that logically. Mm-hmm. How would you meet a Christian man? Maybe they're randomly in your apartment building, but it's kind of like thinking through of like, again, Jenny, what you had said, this is my goal. It will eventually just happen. Mm-hmm. But it's the same with a dream job. Or getting into a dream school. It
never just happens.
No. You always have to work for it, don't you?
You do. You know, life is hard like
that. Life is hard. But that's why you have us. Because maybe you've been thinking that and you've been sitting back and you've been kind of out on the sidelines and you need to be on the front lines of getting what you want. And that might mean getting in a relationship. And so we're here to encourage you to get out there, buck up, get back on that dating horse. Cowgirl.
Yeehaw.
Let me wrap this up. Moral of the story, we want to encourage you that some of the reasons just might be you're not intentional. And that has nothing to do with your identity. You just are not in the right place at the right time. It's easiest in college, I think. Honestly, you graduate, you're not around people all the time. Well, guess what? Solution is more intentionality.
More people time.
More people time. Mm-hmm. We're going to help you with that through the rest of this podcast.
So don't worry. We'll be right there with you.
Hold your hand.
And just want to say that we definitely need to get licensed to officiate weddings.
Yes.
Just in case this really works. And then someone says, just so you know, I got married and a big influence was because of your podcast. We will officiate the wedding.
We will.
If you want that to happen, we'll make it happen.
Yes. The officiation will be free. You do have to pay to fly us out, but we will do it for free.
We would do it. So here's the thing is that, we can't guarantee that you will get a husband after listening to all 10 episodes of this podcast. No one can guarantee it.
This is not Millionaire Matchmaker.
Exactly.
It's how to get a guy in 10 ways.
This isn't even a game show. So don't worry. You're not, but you do need to play to win. You know what I mean? But here's the thing, is that it's all about upping your chances. So you just want to up your chances as much as possible by being in settings and interacting with people you could potentially be interested in. It's not about trying to guarantee things because nothing is a guarantee in life. But you can set yourself up for success, just like there is no guarantee you'll get that dream job you want. But you do all the right things and you fill out your resume as best you can and a cover letter and you get the recommendations and you try your best. And then it's not ultimately fully in your hands. There's someone else who says, okay, we will hire you or we're going to pass and go for someone else. That's like dating. But if you never even put in an application, you have 0 chances of getting the job.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Amen.
Wayne Gretzky, for all the hockey fans listening.
Are you a hockey fan?
Yes, actually. But I remember because in The Office, it's Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott.
Oh, okay.
Because he's quoting the quote.
Mm-hmm.
Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott. Someone I saw be the most content single person I've probably ever met was my friend Kyle. And he is now in a really wonderful relationship. But he was single for probably the whole time that I've known him. And I think it's been about 6 or 7 years. And he wanted a relationship and he wanted to get married. Those were things he wanted. But he did not waste 1 minute of his life. And he was actively at the same time, intentionally trying to go on dates, and he was intentionally putting himself out there. But during the time I've known him, he's learned like 3 different languages.
Wow.
He's very talented musically. He was playing in a band. He was working his regular job. He would be over our house having dinner and wine nights once a week. He cultivated such a close-knit, wonderful community that I'm sure there were plenty of times where our friend groups would get together and most people are coupled up and he wasn't, that it would be like, oh, like I really wish I had someone. But I never saw him waste any of those opportunities. I never saw him back out of an event because he was like, oh, I don't want to go alone. Mm-hmm. And so I know those were probably thoughts and feelings and desires, but really he was just living his life. And now I think he's so happy he did not waste those 6 or 7 years pining over someone, and who he's with, he's so happy to be with. He's 30 as well. So for people that are in their mid to late 20s and are like, oh my gosh, it's been so long, it'll never happen. That's not true. It does. And he did not waste a second of being single. I'm sure that doesn't mean his journey was perfect. No. He probably felt discouraged. He probably was hurt different times. Mm-hmm. He did go on dates, and I'm sure that he liked or didn't like, and there was rejection that he was dealing with. But I didn't see him mope over it. Mm-hmm. I saw him continuously put himself out there, go for the things that he wanted, but he didn't stop life in the process. He got really invested in a church, really invested in a small group. He did not put any of his life on hold until he found a spouse. Mm-hmm. And so I would use that to encourage you that the end, he still had those desires. Marriage was still something he wanted. When you're content with where you are and content in your identity enough to know that dating someone or being married to someone does not change your identity at all, then it's easy to not waste your life in the season of singleness.
Mm-hmm. And I would like every listener to take this time to just think, what have I been putting off because, I want to wait to do that until I'm married, or it'll be embarrassing if I try to do this adventure by myself now. Something that you can do now, but you have purposely said, no, I'll wait. It's not the right time for whatever reason. And instead of doing that and waiting until you think your life is going to be almost perfect, just do it today. Because there is nothing more attractive than a person who is living life to the fullest right now, and who has hobbies, and who's passionate about something, who has good community and relationships, who's plugged in with a church. Because if you sit down for a first date with someone, let's say they end up being your spouse, what do you want them to be like as a person?
Yeah.
Do you want them to have hobbies? Do you want them to have things that they're passionate about? Do you want them to be plugged into a church? So if you want that for someone you're looking for, you should also become that while you're waiting.
Yeah. This isn't a season of stalling out. It's not a season of, I'm just passing the time. It's a season of active waiting, intentional waiting. You know that there's something in the future, but that doesn't make this season any lesser. You're going to learn so much from the Lord. Again, it's not that you can do more or less, but sometimes you could do different when you're single. Things that you look back on, you're like, wow, that was such a great season. I know women that have gone on the mission field, been there for years, came back, and then married their spouse. The majority of missionaries are single women. Mm-hmm. We would lose out on so much valuable to the kingdom if they didn't go while they were single. If they put that off and was like, said, I'll go.
It'll be easier when we go together when we're married.
Yes, when they're married. Mm-hmm. Because I know also women that have wanted to be a missionary, had that desire, and then when they got married, they did not marry someone who also had that call. And so God can change that, but that was most important, was being married. And so that's not to say that was right or wrong, but what I'm saying is you can't miss out on God's plans for you.
Yeah.
If God has the gift of marriage for you and you're following the Lord and you are working on being content, you are not going to miss it. He's not going to be like, that was your one chance.
You blinked and you missed it.
You absolutely biffed it. Mm-hmm. You are toast. That was your only opportunity. Yeah. Good luck, buddy. You're on your own. That's not how God works. And so dive into it.
Mm-hmm.
Dive into it fully. Be excited about a season of singleness. Live with your friends.
Yeah.
Buy a house. Go after your dream job. Move if that's what you really want to. You can't outrun God's plans for you. You can't outmove it. You can't out-career it. You can't. So don't let not having a spouse hold you back.
I love the very end of Psalm 23 that says, "My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and your mercy will run after me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." So I think like maybe 2 years ago, I started thinking, what does that mean? Like, it will run after me all the days of my life. Don't I need to seek the Lord, and then I like enjoy his goodness because he is goodness? And God was like, no matter what you do, I will always come after you. There will always be goodness and mercy running after you. And so, do you really believe that God has goodness and mercy for you today while you're still single? That today is not second best. That if your life goes on and you never get married, I know that is a goal, but it's not a guarantee. So if you never get married, will you look back on today and said, I'm so glad I lived my life how I did that day?
Yeah.
Because today is important and it counts very much. So we have several episodes we will also link in the show notes that have to do with living an abundant single life and how to wait well and how to heal from things. Why can't I just be happy? All those we will link in the show notes. There are other resources that you can listen to if you're a podcast listener, which we assume you are because you're listening right now. And those will help you use this time wisely in your single life, because you cannot have a happy marriage someday if you're not happy with being single today.
Yes. And so that's the first way that you are going to go after
You're going to get a guy.
You're going to get a guy.
You're going to get him.
You are going to be a content person.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's not going to be perfect.
No.
It's never going to be perfect.
You
are going to be a work in progress, and the Lord works on us our whole life. But you're creating a foundation of contentment in your singleness so you can bring that foundation of contentment into your relationship. And that's way one of how you're going to get the relationship that you want.